Welcome, everyone. This is Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I will be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about education and empowering teachers to find a role in their position. Now, it might sound strange, but teachers need teachers. Teachers need coaches. Teachers need guidance. The same way they offer that same types of roles and positions and guidance for the students, teachers need that too, because at the end of the day, we're all human. So we are going to deal with hardship. We're going to deal with turmoil. We're going to deal with challenge. And we do have to know how to manage that. And today, many good teachers are leaving a career because of politics, because of a position that is out of their control. And teachers want some freedom. Teachers want to teach their children, teach their students how life can be in abundance. Yet we operate in the school system, especially today, in limiting beliefs. We operate in the sense of scarcity. We operate in the sense of, well, this is what you need to know. Don't ask questions. And from there, students don't necessarily gain everything they need by the time they leave school. That's why they don't know how to maybe balance a checkbook, or they know anything about finances or taxes. They are just going through the system, going through the curriculum. There is a way to be an effective teacher, even in our world today. But many teachers are finding that it's just not worth it. It's not worth the hassle. It's not worth going through all the red tape and dealing with all the directors and administration, because they're always going to be on your tail. However, there is a way that we can empower teachers to understand that they can follow the rules, but then still be the best teacher that they're going to be remembered for the rest of their life. Because I can remember all of my teachers growing up, from kindergarten all the way up into college. Now, college, I don't necessarily remember them. It wasn't as a meaningful experience. It was more just going, getting my classes, getting my credits, getting my degree. There are some teachers that I remember because they had an impact in college, but it's a different type of situation in college versus in elementary and even high school, depending on what type of high school you go to. So teaching is going to be something that is going to be a unique experience for every educator and for every child. You might find that you have had bad teachers all your life and you just disdain teachers and you don't believe that they're good. However, there are some amazing teachers in this world. There are some amazing teachers that I would work with today side by side in a school and be proud that I'm an educator teaching these children. But sometimes there can be a bad egg. Sometimes there can be a bad directive from administration that just kind of leads us astray, and it leads us wondering, well, what is the purpose of me being here? Because I'm not someone who just reads a script, or I'm not someone who just comes in and administers tests. I want to educate. I want to instill passion in these children. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to be bringing on an empowerment educator coach who's going to be helping us understand what teaching truly is and how we can start to implement better systems in our school today so our children can turn out to be the people full of life, full of abundance, full of happiness, instead of worker bees in the future. So you're not going to want to miss this episode with Grace Stevens and myself. Welcome, Grace Stevens, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We're going to be talking about the work that you do. You are an education empowerment coach, and that is what we need in our world today, because teachers have it hard. They have to deal with raising kids that are not their own, teaching kids that are not their own, developing leaders that are going to eventually be the leaders that they follow. Teachers have a selfless role. They are the candles that light the way for our children, for the future generations along the way. I know parents sometimes think that teachers are just glorified babysitters, but they are far from that. But we're going to be talking about the work that you do and how you help empower these teachers. But in your own words, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help them?
I am Grace Stevens, and I am teacher empowerment coach. Kind of made that up. I'm not sure that was a role that was out there, but it was definitely a role that was missing. Well, I was in the classroom for 20 years until just very recently. I did teach pre-pandemic, during pandemic, post-pandemic. It's definitely changed. But I have always focused on helping other teachers have a more positive teaching experience. I really have this kind of, I was a second career teacher. I kind of really came into it with an intentionality And kids just always want to be a teacher, right? You grew up, you went to school, you ended up, you became the teacher, whatever. But I came to it almost midway through my life, and I really did give a lot of thought to what I wanted to create in a classroom. Going to school for me had been like a magical experience, and I wanted to create that for students. And I have this big idea that your energy teaches more than your lesson plans. In what I try and help educators connect with, because this, like you said, all the challenges in education right now, everybody knows it's only getting more challenging, and teachers are burning out. Excellent teachers are leaving. Just as tragically, teachers who are excellent but are burnt out are staying. And that's not helpful for anybody either, certainly not students or for themselves. And so I empower them to have a more positive teaching experience by looking at setting boundaries, limiting beliefs, all of those things.
Teaching is, as you said, a career where you can easily get burned out because it is so much on your plate. Testing, sometimes behavioral issues, politics now. There's just so much that you have to juggle, and you cannot fit that all in one day, one lesson plan. As you said, energy teaches more than lesson plans. You're completely correct. We have a similar background. You have more experience than me in teaching. I only taught 5 years in public schools, and you are 20 years plus, right? So around there. That right there, you have seen many of the hardships, many of the growths, and many of the changes that are happening. So you are well suited to be an empowerment coach for teachers. Yes, you might have made that role up, but you are 100% right. It is a role that teachers need. And to be honest, I don't think teachers even understand that they need this, because they go through their schooling, they get their bachelor's, maybe their master's, they do their cooperating teaching, and then they're thrown into the water, and and hopefully they can swim. Hopefully they just know what to do. But personal development is one of those things that teachers need ongoing. They need to learn new methods, new tips and tricks. We're going to be getting into that today, right? How do you help teachers become empowered? Like, what are some of those tools you use to get them into the empowered mindset?
First off, I just want to start by saying this is, like I said, I was a second career teacher. I had a very big corporate career. I went up the corporate ladder. I achieved everything I thought I wanted to achieve by the time I was 30, which sounds like a bold claim, but I actually did it. I was a corporate VP, large company, beautiful house, awesome kids, and stress beyond the max. Did not participate in my life at all. Kind of felt like I was on the outside looking in, right? I felt like I financed it, but then I outsourced it. I made this very big intentional change to do something with purpose. And I had always wanted to be a teacher when I was a little girl, but then I got off track thinking I needed to make money, right? Then I got into education, and I had these big dreams of what I thought it was going to be. And, 20 something years ago, it was simpler. You spent magical time with children, but very quickly I started feeling the same burnout. Oh my gosh, stress, overworked, and anxious. I decided I could not change careers again. Like, I'd already gone back to school once with 2 young children, and I needed to do was change myself. That's how I got into this work of studying cognitive behavioral therapy, all the things, neurolinguistic programming, things, right? So I never got into this work to fix other teachers. I got it to fix myself. And I made great strides in learning to control my environment and feel empowered, and understanding that I could create my own teaching experience inside my classroom. I could have my own little kingdom, regardless of what was going on outside. And it could be fun and magical, and kids could learn and be cooperative and all those things. What happened is a lot of other teachers started saying, your experience doesn't seem to be our experience, even though we have the same students, the same administrator, the same parents, right? The same setup. I taught in Title I schools for most of my career, so we know the challenges that come with that. That's when I really began to recognize that what I did do was I had taught myself to be empowered. And so I came up with this framework. I call it the ECHO framework. I mean, we're teachers, right? Acronyms, what you put out comes back to you. The E is for your energy teaches more than your lesson plans, right? It's your vibe. That really, how excited you are and how you show up and how you support students really makes the difference, right? More than what curriculum you adopted. And then the C in the ECHO is control what you can control. Can't control all of it. There's so much of it, right? You got to focus on the part you can control. The H is happiness can be synthesized. I do a lot of deep dive into the science behind that. That is, I think teachers are more open to that now. 20 years ago, they weren't really so open to that idea. But now that we have growth mindset and so much focus on that in the classrooms, that your intelligence is not fixed, you know what? Neither is your happiness set point. You can flex your happy muscle. You can create new pathways, right? That is a large part of it. And then the last part, the O, is other teachers' experience doesn't need to be your experience. And that's where all the limiting beliefs and all the how you really choose what you focus on, all those things come into play. So that's basically the framework. I wrote a book that broke it down into 10 habits. That was about 5 years ago, and really distilled it down even more simpler than that now, because to some people, 10 habits seem like a big one, a lot of things to adopt, but they all basically fall into those 4 areas.
When it comes to teaching, it's going to be a unique experience for everybody. When I started teaching, I was actually an accounting major before I even switched into teaching. So I was accounting, I was working at Sikorsky. They built the helicopters, the Black Hawk helicopters for the Army. And I was working there for 2 years. After that experience, I was like, first year was cool. I enjoyed it. I'm making money. I was like, I got to make money. And then the second year is like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I'm like 19 years old. So I was like, all right, I just wasted 2 years of college, basically. So like, let me switch my majors. Let me figure out what I want to do. So I did music as my major. And I was like, I enjoyed teaching just through the process of growing up. I always had an inkling that I wanted to be a teacher. But then I was like, teachers don't really make any money. So I steered away to a job that made money, but then I was just miserable early on in my career. And I was like, I'm not going to do this to myself. So I went straight into teaching. Loved every single day of it. There's a lot of politics in schools. Even at my time in 2009 to 2016, I was dealing with a lot of politics. I don't know if you have dealt with this, but being a young, Black, handsome man, and I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal here, it causes a lot of problems because parents, teachers, they look my way. It's like, what is he doing here? I should be doing something different. Even though I had a love for teaching, I had a love for educating children and helping them be better than where they are or were. It was always a stigma on me saying like, what is this guy doing? Eventually, I found a good school with a strong principal. She could read me saying, you're a good guy. We just had things implemented to keep the door open, common sense things for, I guess, male teachers. It was a different life for me, but I never really had an issue with behavior. I never had an issue with like curriculum, them learning, being better than they were the year before. However, if I look at other teachers in the district, they would struggle. And it was because they couldn't keep up with the times. So they were living in the past, but the kids are thinking in a new mindset today. I wanted to get into a conversation with you because you have so many years of experience, how mindsets and ideologies change throughout the years and how teachers have to be flexible. They're not just keep doing the same thing that they did on day one or year one. And 20 years later, they find that it's not effective.
Okay, so first off, I want to say I am so sorry for your experience. And I know it's not unique. And that's really tragic because in education, as a whole, certainly we need more males. We need more people of color. We need more positive role models. For children, they need somebody who looks like them. Taught in Title I schools for a long time, and we just did not have enough males, period. And there was a lot of kids, unfortunately, without dads. And we really needed more of that in the schools. And your experience is not alone. And I know that I come from a pretty privileged place that I'm a white middle-aged lady. And I started teaching. I already had a career and I already had kids. So I already kind of had a confidence around me that children minded me, right? Like there's some teachers who you mind and there are some teachers who you don't. It becomes a sport. We all know that, right? When the poor substitute teacher shows up. So anyway, there's that. I just wanted to get that off my chest. And the second thing, yes, definitely. There's a difference between teaching 20 years and teaching the same year 20 times, right? That's not, that when I started, it was all still, I don't know, remember when you went to school, probably, the thematic units. Oh, well, we're doing Ocean Week and you'd get your books off the shelf. It was before the computers, whatever. And then at the beginning of my career, I think mostly scripted curriculum started to come in. where you all had that horrible experience of the curriculum police. I don't know if you ever had that, where everybody in the same grade was supposed to be on the same page on the same day with the same script. Like, you could have hired a ventriloquist to have done that. Why did you hire me if I'm just going to read from a script, right? And so many teachers were resistant to that. And many schools didn't know how to let teachers have a middle road. Like, it takes a lot mindset shift to think, I teach the standards, not the curriculum, right? I'm not teaching this lesson today because it was the next one in the book. It's because it's what the kids needed. It's the natural progression. Like, I find teachers now, we need to be so intentional about what we actually don't do. There's just too much. You can't do it. There's no way. You need to make intentional choices about what you're not going to do, right? Think that schools need a culture, and it begins with the administrator, that respects teachers to make those decisions, to not just to teach for the test, but to teach for where the kids are without using all the buzzword. That's one thing I pride myself on. I do the PD that you wish you had, or I wish I had. No jargon, no data-driven instruction, no student outcomes. It's for teachers. How do you as a teacher have a better teaching experience? Because if you have a better teaching experience, guaranteed your students are having a better experience and the student outcomes will be there. But we all know, we don't even need to be teachers. There's probably listeners who aren't teachers. Most people went to school. They know the difference between the teacher who is exhausted and resentful and just trying to get through the day, right? And the teacher who's really passionate about what they're doing. And come on, guys, let's just get this done so that we can get to read another chapter of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, right? Like, hey, like, you mess up something, the kids give you a lot of grace. You have fun, you laugh, like I said, it's there's a whole, I like to say when I close my door, I'm a revolutionary, because out in the whole teaching world and on campus, there's negative things happening and there's a lot of pressure. But when you close your door, you can make that world your world, a community with students. And I think that's the first mindset shift, is to stop being mad. Like, it isn't fair and it isn't okay. But at this point, you can make a difference inside your classroom. And that's where it needs to start. That's what I would say. But it is very difficult. I will acknowledge that I was always one who kind of had Jedi skills with classroom management. And I commanded respect. I was personable. I really cared about the kids. I created a safe environment. Kids always felt, I see you, you matter. Like, it's just something that I managed to communicate without necessarily saying those words. But in classrooms these days, after the escapade into lockdown and coming back, even I found it, with all my years of experience and my confidence, even I got kicked around in the area of classroom management. So many dysregulated kids, it's so painful to see. And I think there was such a rush from administrators to get back to normal. And what back to normal meant was get back focusing on test scores. And it's like, these kids are in such distress. They forgot how to do school. The least of it was they lost academic skills, like they lost social skills, they lost confidence. There's just a lot of things. So it is a difficult time, but it's not impossible to carve out a better experience. But it does take intention. It's not, you can't just show up to school tomorrow and hope tomorrow's going to be better. It won't be.
Yeah. You do have to walk in every single day into school optimistic, driven, ready to give 100%. And it's hard when you're burned out to give that 100%. If you're tired, if you don't feel good. I remember one time I just didn't feel good. Like I had a fever or something, but I knew if I didn't go, like there was no substitute. It would be a very difficult position for all the other teachers if I didn't show up. So I go in and I was like, first class was like 9:00 in the morning. And I was like, okay, first class comes in. Let me just give 50%. I said, let me give 50%. Let's see what happens. It was terrible. All right.
Yeah.
Everything went wrong. And I'm really good at like behavioral classroom management stuff. And it was just not right, because the kids could read me like a book. Oh, he's only doing 50%. I didn't tell him I was doing 50%. It's just like they can feel it the same way they can feel as if you care, as if you appreciate them, and that they're just not another kid. Because whenever there was a conflict, whenever there was something going on, if I came from a place of love and consideration, it was easier to reach them. And so we do have to give that 100%. Because if we go in thinking we can get 50% and survive the day, you're going to find that you're not going to make it. Because after that first class, I said, I can't do 50%. I have to give 100%, regardless of how I feel. And I gave 100% going after that. And I didn't have any more hiccups that day. But it was a great experience for me because I realized that you can't half-ass teaching. You have to be there. You have to be present. You have to be deliberate. And it's very hard when you're just reading a script. Like, they know you're reading a script. Like, you're just like, all right, this is what we're going to be doing today. They know that's happening. But if you're relatable, if you're there, if you're present, if you are a voice of reason and understanding, those children are going to go leaps and bounds for you. And that is where I think an educator can shine the most if their kids will give them the most and give them everything that they can. Because I also taught swimming for some time. In that process, I found the kids that did the best were the kids who were just in love with the process of swimming and wanting to impress me. When that was correlated to school, the kids who wanted to improve their skills. Because when I went into a broken school where the teacher was actually out for medical reasons for about 2 years. So they didn't have a teacher for 2 years in music. When I went in, they didn't know much. They knew like a couple of things, but everything was off. The tone was off, behavior was off. So the first year was acclimating them to me. The second year was shining like rock stars, like they all were. And when my director came to me the second year, he goes, "What are you doing to these kids? Like from year one to now is night and day difference." And I was like, we've been getting to work because that is what they want to do. They want to get to work, but you do have to create that environment for them. And the next question I want to ask is, how can a teacher create an environment that promotes healthy learning rather than an environment that just promotes obedient children who are going to sit and listen?
Well, that's a really good question because there is old school teachers, right? But even new teachers coming in, you can't teach if a room is chaos. There does need to be a certain amount of time during the class period where kids are getting work. I always say you can tell how good a teacher is by who's talking. If the teacher's doing all the talking, they're not a great teacher. If the kids are working and the teacher's going around, facilitating, helping, one of the things that made me most proud was when students would help each other. I would give them time and grace to do that. That is really just, you do need a certain amount of compliance. You can't have disrespect happening and disruption. But a silent classroom isn't a classroom where kids are learning. They need to be excited. You need to, wherever possible, like I said, I always thought it's not my job to teach the curriculum. It's to teach the standards. If a kid needs to be able to demonstrate to me they can do X, Y, and Z, it doesn't need to be 50 questions off in the workbook. Do the first 5, then I know you got it. Then how else can you show me? And I would give kids a lot of creative freedom, not all the time, but in some assignments, they always knew there was something they could do that at some point during the week they could work on, a passion project, something they were really excited about. Or if they wanted to demonstrate their learning, on anything that we were doing. One of the things I love to teach reading, I would let kids do 1 book report a month. You know how that used to be. You'd come in and you'd read the report. I just let them go on Flipgrid, which is, an interactive video, and they could do it. And I gave them a choice board. There were 12 choices. Do whatever you want. Make an advert, make a YouTube trailer, draw a cartoon, like something that interested them, but showed that they had learned something too. I think students are no different than adults. We want a little bit of, one of the things that is when you look at the things that make people happy, flow state, purpose, all those things, one of them is occupational self-direction. Right? And so that's where a lot of teachers have been frustrated over the last 15 years. Everything got totally mandated and restricted creativity, like you were sucking the joy out of the classroom, right? Right. I still showed up dressed like an Oompa Loompa on Willy Wonka Day. Like I just called it Willy Wonka Day, showed up like an Oompa Loompa. Yeah, we did a lot of learning. Kids would write about, hey, we were learning persuasive writing. Convince me to make your candy. Like that was something that was exciting to them. But kids need that occupational self-direction just as much as adults, if not more. Otherwise, they're not creative. We need to cultivate this generation of creative problem solvers. And that doesn't come by like memorizing your times tables anymore, when we all know that we got a calculator for that. I think it's giving students as many opportunities to, this, kids, they want a choice and a voice. It's always been that simple. I can't remember the first, probably the Love and Logic people were the first people to come up with saying it that way. But kids want a choice and a voice. And if you can give them both of those, your day will go smoother, because when kids are engaged, they behave better. We know that. It's like, a vicious cycle. They're misbehaving. The teacher gets mad. The teacher's grumpy and it gets worse and worse. Well, there's a virtuous cycle too. Like the happier they are, the more engaged they are, the more relaxed the teacher is, the more fun they're willing to have. And then the day just gets better and better and better, as opposed to that downward spiral. And the teacher needs to have the confidence to, when it is going in that downward spiral, have some tools in their tool belt and the confidence to say, stop. Hey, we're only halfway through the lesson. You know what, guys? Oh, I'm not feeling this. Seems like you're not getting it. Let's do something else for a while. Let's try again tomorrow. And just change the energy in the room. And have, like I said, a tool belt of things that that the kids like to do that only take a couple of minutes, maybe a brain break or a brain boost, or, all the little strategies that we're taught. But to take control. We know when we're teaching if it's going south. Why are you going to keep going south? Like, just stop. Let's read a chapter of a book. Let's do a go noodle. Let's do something to change the energy. And then really the learning can continue, because otherwise they've checked out. They're not learning. It's like beating a dead horse. And that's the worst feeling when you're a teacher. You're just going through the motions, right? You're just dialing it in. Kids don't want that. We don't want that either. So
I'm going to ask you a quick question and just give me the answer, and then we're going to have a conversation. Have you ever been a cooperating teacher, like teaching other students to be teachers?
I've been a mentor. Yeah, a mentor teacher.
Yeah. I can tell, like, all the students who worked under you just probably learned so much, because a lot of the things you have been speaking about are a lot of the things that my mentor teacher, my cooperating teacher, told me about. So I remember one time we were in class and it was going south, and I was just like, well, let's keep going. Let's keep going. We got 40 minutes. we got 40 minutes left. Like, all right. And then, like, after the lesson, he was like, all right, when things are going south, you stop. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So then when I was a solo teacher by myself now, and things would go south, I would say, I'm shutting down. And then that right there was just like, oh, like, this guy's not playing around. Like, we were fooling around. We were doing the wrong thing. He shut it down. And so they learned very quickly, like, all right, yes, we were doing the wrong thing, but he also has control. He was able to get back control, and then we can try again. We can reintroduce it, basically, is what happened. It's like, okay, are we ready now? Because we can sit down and we can do it this way, but I think this way is a little bit more enjoyable. And they realized it. So it was almost like the unspoken language. And you are right. If they have a choice and a voice, it is so much easier to run a classroom. I worked my last year special education. And whenever I had students, just even in my early years of teaching music, they would come in to do observations on the students, and vice principals would come in to do the observations. And every time, like, the class was over, principal would come over to me, whoever, this guy doesn't even have a problem, it seems like, with you, because he's doing everything he's supposed to do, blah, 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 blah. And it's just because they're engaged, you're doing something they enjoy, versus like, all right, sit, like, be good. And I never called a student a bad kid. I have a terminology for them. I call them heavy hitters. They're like, if you're familiar with baseball, you could throw a fastball, they're going to get a home run every single time. So sometimes you got to get ready to do curveballs. You got to do some change ups and things like that. And you have to be ready for bear. You have to be ready for whatever they're going to toss your way. Because when you get into the mindset that there's bad students, or that there's students who are not worth your time, and you're like, oh, this student will never be anything, the joy of teaching is going to start to dissipate a lot sooner than if you just always had that aspiration of, no matter the child, no matter the grade, I want everyone to succeed. And that's where a lot of limiting beliefs come in, because teachers are going to give those to kids like, hey, you're not going to be anything. You might as well just give up, be a garbage man. And teachers say that, and
terrible.
And it's crazy because they do it in the teacher's room, in the cafeteria. And it's just like, whoa, like, how much negativity can a teacher have that's supposed to be positive and uplifting these children?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time coaching teachers on just protecting their mental peace, but also, yeah, just each child. Like I never looked at, when their file comes to you and the teacher the year before has written something, I never even look at that. Like this is a clean slate. I believe everybody can be successful and kids rise to the occasion. And I really, those kids that have hit us, I call them my spiritual practice. I mean, there are days, I'm not going to lie, there are kids that you're just like, oh my gosh, woo, right. Today is not to take it personally, not to let them get to me, because sometimes it is like a game, right? They want kids who feel so out of control. The only way they feel in control is they can control an adult's emotions. There are these kids that try and get you to lose it. You ever have one of those that once they finally lost it, they're so escalated and now you're escalated and they suddenly decompress because now they feel they're in control. Understanding that and knowing that that's just a maladaptive habit that a child has, not that they're a bad child, but they're in survival mode. How can I make them feel control in other ways that are more productive? But yeah, I'm not going to lie. There's some kids are spiritual practice. It takes all year to get through to them. But those are the kids you remember the most, right?
Exactly.
Those are the kids
Yes.
that teach you the most. Those are the kids that make the job most satisfying. Those are the kids that, 15 years later, I run into them and they still run up and hug me in the grocery store. Miss S, and they tower above me and had them in second grade. It really is, like I said, it's a mindset shift that you can create your own experience. Other teachers' experience doesn't need to be your experience, not with those students, not with the administrator. You can have your own experience of that person, despite you create it. You don't just go along with it. But it does take intention, it does take practice, but it is so worthwhile. Otherwise, why teaching if we're stressed and we're just living for the weekend or for retirement? Did you ever teach with those, what I call a road teacher, which is like retired on active duty? You get so many years in, right? You're like, what are my choices? Like, I got to hang out for the pension, and that kids know that too. They know that. And they're going to play you up, and it's not going to be fun, and it's not going to be what they need. It's not productive, and it's not fair to you, and it's not fair to your family. And it's just like, so it's this whole kind of vicious circle. So it is something that takes intention, that can be done. And the one thing I do want to say is, especially as there are so many teachers quitting, and, I try to stay off social media for my mental health, but I see a lot of shaming going on good teachers who are leaving. And I think feelings aren't binary. You can be 100% frustrated with education and fed up with the way kids are behaving and still be a good teacher and still love teaching and still know it's your purpose, right? It isn't like, ooh, I love teaching or I hate teaching. It's like you love teaching and it's what you should be doing, but you recognize parts of it are challenging, and then try and take control of those parts, but not to think it's all or nothing. To like, oh my God, I can't take these kids anymore, I'm quitting. Like, there's something you could do in between. You could up your skills on setting boundaries, on intentionally creating balance, on knowing how to protect your peace, on decompressing your nervous system. Teaching is like an assault on your nervous system, right? There's lots of things teachers could do. And that's where I think focus should be put, not so much just always on test scores and student outcomes.
Teaching is a magical position, and we learn so much as educators, and the students learn the good teachers, and they can separate the good from the bad, and they're going to remember the good teachers. And it's important for them and for their growth, because that one teacher can change their whole entire outlook, from teachers who said they couldn't do something to teachers who believed in them, who saw their future, who saw their potential. And that's important for children to understand, that they do matter. And our conversation is a conversation that does matter. It's a conversation that everyone should listen to, whether you're a principal, an educator, parent, to understand that our children are someone else's problem. All right. If they're in our class, they are going to be our concern, and we should want the best for them and do the best for them. And as we begin to wrap up, I would love to have you tell the audience where they can find you if they want to reach out to you, and then to share maybe a quick tip or quote for us to walk away with.
First off, you can just find me at gracestevens.com, and that's Stevens with a V. gracestevens.com, and there I have courses, I have lots of free resources. In fact, gracestevens.com/happy is a whole video training on the most empowered, least stressed teachers in the world. If you're a teacher, go look at that. I would say one quick tip, and it's for everybody. I want to give a tip to everybody. And it's one of my favorite quotes, actually, from Albert Einstein, who you wouldn't really think would be all about the getting your happy on. But it is the most important decision we need to make in life is whether we think we live in a friendly or a hostile universe. It really comes down to, do you believe that those kids, those parents, those administrators, those co-workers, do you believe they're out to get you? Or do you believe they're doing the best they can with the skills they got in the situation that they find themselves in? And if you believe that about everybody, you will assume the best intentions, you will extend grace to other people, and you will find that the universe will respond in kind. I think that is probably what I would like to say to people. Make the decision. It's not just a mindset, it's a decision you make. Do you really, I'm going to look for the good stuff and I'm going to find it. Because if you set your radar to the bad stuff, wow, that's easy to find. But if you want to intentionally set your radar to look for the kids who are on task, to look for the kids who are helping other students, who are worried about their little siblings, did they get their lunch, like all the good stuff, you'll find it.
Perfect. And I'll definitely toss all your social medias and all your call to actions in the description box below so people can easily follow you and learn more about your work, check out your book, and then begin to understand education for what it truly is. Amazing. I want to thank you so much, Grace Stevens, for coming on. Great conversation. All right, everyone. I would like to thank you so much for watching that episode of Grace Stevens and myself. What went on in that brief conversation was magical. Just as we were speaking, I could have talked to Grace all day long about education, about teaching, about her passions, about her experiences. And I can tell you, I would have learned even more than what I know. I would have learned so much because at some point, we do have to gain some wisdom from someone who has walked the path, who has been the trailblazer already and has experienced things, because we can learn from trial and error or we can learn from wisdom. Just as I was talking about in the episode, where I had my cooperating teacher and I was making mistakes. I was a beginner teacher. Of course, we're all beginners at some level in the beginning. Even though I was really good at classroom management, my skills and my know-how of knowing when to stop and when to go was something of wisdom, was something of experience that I was lacking. But going through the process and through my 14 weeks of being a student teacher, I learned so much. I learned how to manage students better. I learned about expectations. I learned about allowing them to be children. Now, understanding that education is something that needs to be controlled to some level, but controlled in the sense of controlled chaos or pragmatic chaos. So we want them to learn. We want them to have fun. We want them to have a voice and a choice, as we said in this episode, because they're going to correlate their education with their confidence. So if they are with a teacher who's educating them, who's not only saying how smart they are, but also they're getting the grades, they're getting the scores, their confidence level is going to magically shoot up. And it's not so much that if they're a C student, they have no confidence, or they're an F student, they have zero confidence. It's just that how much will they apply themselves? And I have found that students will apply themselves even if they're not the best, if the teacher is there supporting them. And that is what we need more of in our schools. Teachers who support children, not teachers who want to apply politics or limiting beliefs in these children's lives, but teachers who apply an understanding that this child can be anything that they want. A life of abundance can be theirs, but there is a way that it needs to be done. It needs to be done with structure. It needs to be done with hard work. It needs to be done with diligence. And if teachers have their hands handcuffed behind their backs and they can only teach the curriculum, or they can only teach via a script or a Zoom meeting, they're going to have a hard time reaching these children, because you do have to have that intrapersonal type of relationship with someone if you want it to be effective or to have effective results. If I just had programs in my coaching career, and we will be having some, but it's going to be more of a course than a program that you just kind of follow and listen. It's going to be a course that after you're done with this course, you're going to have all of the skills necessary for you to develop in a strong mindset. Of course, you can watch the motivational videos. Of course, you can listen to this podcast. Of course, you can read all the blogs we have at revenconcepts.com. And all of that is going to be the same thing. It's going to give you the same results. But sometimes people want things curated in just one package. This is what I want. Give me everything that I need to know. I'm going to take care of it. That is what school is one package that gives children everything they need or should give them everything they need. But sometimes they're missing pieces like IKEA furniture. You try to put it together and you find out that you're missing a leg, or you're missing an arm, or you're missing a top or a drawer or a knob. From there, we do have to use our creative mindset, our creative way of thinking to see what we can do, remedy this situation, and then to have some quality control as teachers and to make sure that we're just not letting teachers who are doing harm to our children or doing harm to the progress that these children can be living in. Imagination is stripped at such a young age, and imagination is essential to success, is essential to growth. Because if you cannot imagine where you want to be, if you cannot have some awareness of where you are, it's going to be difficult for you to make progress in your life. So we do need more mentors. We do need more coaches and teachers, just like Grace. The work that she does is she helps teachers get into the mindset that are going to help them be the best educators they can be. And I have found in my career, you can try to do it all by yourself, but it's a very difficult task. It's almost impossible, not impossible, but it's damn near close. So we do want to make sure that we are equipping teachers, parents, educators, administrators, everyone with the knowledge they need, the skills they need, the discipline that they should be having when it comes to education. This conversation is just the beginning. I encourage everyone again to reach out to Grace, to check out some of the amazing work that she's doing, because what she is doing is amazing. She spent 20 years in the school. She spent some years in corporate. She has found a joy. She has found a passion. She has found a love in what she does even today, helping people be better than where they were. And that is what teaching is. How can I help you grow? How can I help you prosper? How can I help you succeed with the mindset that you need in this world today? My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, you can email me coachinginsession@gmail.com, and I will see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone take care.